It was a typical Friday evening in my cozy apartment. I had just settled in for a quiet night with a glass of wine, some takeout, and a movie I'd been meaning to watch for weeks. I'm Josh, by the way. I'm 28, work in graphic design, and have lived in this apartment building for about 3 years now. I know most of my neighbors by name, but there's one in particular, Mike from across the hall, who I've become pretty good friends with since he moved in last year. Mike's your typical guy's guy, loves sports, works in construction management, has a rotating cast of girlfriends, and definitely identifies as straight. We bonded initially over our shared love of the same local craft brewery, and since then, we've fallen into an easy friendship of watching games together, grabbing the occasional beer, and helping each other out with small favors. That night, I had just pressed play on the movie when my phone lit up with a text from Mike. "Hey man, weird question, but is your power out too?" I glanced around my fully lit apartment and replied that everything was fine on my end. Apparently, half the building had lost power due to some issue with the electrical grid in our part of town. Mike's side of the building was completely dark, and according to the electric company's website, it wouldn't be restored until sometime the next morning. Under normal circumstances, this wouldn't be a huge deal. But let me explain why this particular power outage was problematic. We were in the middle of an unexpected cold snap in late October. Temperatures had plummeted to near freezing, and without electricity, Mike's apartment was quickly becoming uncomfortably cold. To make matters worse, he had a big presentation for work on Monday that he needed to prepare for, and his laptop battery was almost dead. "Any chance I could camp out at your place for a bit? Just to charge my stuff and warm up?" His next text read. Of course I said yes. That's what friends are for, right? I paused my movie and tidied up a bit while waiting for his knock on the door. When Mike arrived, he looked genuinely relieved. He had his laptop bag slung over one shoulder and a small overnight duffel in his hand. "Thanks for this, man. I owe you one," he said, stepping inside. I noticed he was wearing 2 sweatshirts layered on top of each other. "It got cold fast over there," he explained, rubbing his hands together. I offered him something to drink, beer, wine, or coffee, and he opted for coffee to warm up. While I busied myself in the kitchen, he plugged in his laptop and settled on my couch. We fell into easy conversation about work, the power outage, and the upcoming weekend plans. There was nothing unusual about any of it, just 2 friends hanging out on a Friday night. As the evening progressed, we ordered more takeout, watched the end of my movie, and then switched to a basketball game that was on. It was comfortable and familiar. Around midnight, as the game ended, Mike checked his phone for updates on the power situation. "Still nothing," he sighed. "They're saying it might not be back until tomorrow afternoon now." Here's where things took an unexpected turn. I could see Mike was trying to figure out his next move, probably calculating if it was worth going back to his freezing apartment or if he should call someone else. Before he could say anything, I offered, "You can crash here if you want. I've got a couch. I've had friends stay over plenty of times before. It wasn't a big deal." Mike looked visibly relieved. "You sure? I don't want to impose." "It's not a problem," I assured him. "Better than freezing all night." So it was decided. I went to grab some spare blankets and a pillow from my closet. When I returned, Mike had taken off one of his sweatshirts and was checking his work emails one last time. I set up the couch as best I could, but I have to admit, it's not the most comfortable piece of furniture for sleeping. It's one of those stylish mid-century modern couches that looks great, but isn't designed for someone who's 6 feet 2 inches to stretch out on. After watching Mike try to get comfortable for about 10 minutes, adjusting and readjusting, his feet hanging off the end, I found myself saying something I hadn't planned. "Look, this is ridiculous. My bed is king-sized. We can share it, and you won't have to fold yourself like origami." Let me pause here and explain something important. This offer wasn't made with any ulterior motives. It was purely practical. Mike is a friend, he was uncomfortable, and I had plenty of space in my bed. In my mind, it was no different than sharing a hotel room with a buddy on a trip. But I'll admit, I did hesitate for a split second before making the offer, wondering if it might make things awkward between us. Mike hesitated too. I could see him weighing his options, pride versus comfort. "You sure that wouldn't be weird?" he asked. I shrugged, trying to keep it casual. "Only if we make it weird. It's just sleeping." After another moment's consideration, he nodded. "All right, thanks. My back will thank you tomorrow." And so we found ourselves getting ready for bed like it was the most normal thing in the world. I lent him a toothbrush I had as a spare, and we took turns in the bathroom. When I came out in my usual sleep attire, t-shirt and pajama pants, Mike was sitting on the edge of the bed in his t-shirt and boxers, looking slightly uncomfortable but trying not to show it. "I usually sleep on the left," I said, gesturing to my side of the bed. "Right side is fine with me," he replied, and with that, we both got under the covers, careful to maintain a respectful distance between us. I turned off the lamp, and we were enveloped in darkness. "Night," I said. "Night. Thanks again," came his reply from the other side of the bed. I lay there for a while, acutely aware of his presence, not in a romantic or sexual way, but simply because having another person in my bed was unfamiliar. I could hear his breathing, could feel the slight shift of the mattress when he moved. It was intimate in the most basic, human sense of the word. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I knew, I was waking up to early morning light filtering through my blinds. And here's where things got interesting. During the night, we had both shifted. Mike was still asleep, but he had moved closer to the center of the bed, and so had I. We weren't cuddling or anything dramatic like that, but our shoulders were touching, and it felt comfortable. I lay there for a few minutes, not wanting to wake him by moving suddenly. There was something strangely peaceful about the moment. In sleep, all the social boundaries we construct fall away. There was no straight friend and gay friend, just two people finding comfort in each other's warmth. When Mike finally stirred, he seemed momentarily disoriented. Then recognition dawned in his eyes, and he quickly shifted back to his side of the bed. "Morning," he mumbled, voice thick with sleep. "Morning," I replied, acting as if waking up next to each other was something we did all the time. "Coffee?" He nodded gratefully, and I slipped out of bed to start the coffee maker. While I was in the kitchen, I heard him head to the bathroom. By the time he emerged, I had 2 mugs ready and was checking my phone. "Power's still out in your place," I informed him, showing him the electric company's update. Mike sighed, running a hand through his sleep-mussed hair. "Figures. Thanks for letting me crash." We sat at my small kitchen table, drinking coffee and easing into the day. There was a slight awkwardness between us, but not as much as I might have expected. Eventually, Mike brought it up himself. "So, that wasn't as weird as I thought it might be," he said with a small laugh. I smiled. "What? Sharing a bed? Told you it wouldn't be a big deal." He nodded, looking thoughtful. "Yeah, I guess I've never really shared a bed with another guy before." "Well, not since camping trips as a kid." "And did you survive the experience?" I teased. "Barely," he joked back, and just like that, the tension dissipated. But there was something in his expression, something I couldn't quite read. It wasn't discomfort exactly, more like curiosity, or perhaps realization. I wondered what he was thinking, but didn't want to press. We spent the rest of the morning hanging out, watching TV, and checking for updates on the power situation. Around noon, the electric company finally restored power to the affected units. Mike gathered his things, thanked me again, and headed back to his apartment. As I closed the door behind him, I found myself reflecting on the experience. It was such a small thing, really, offering shelter and comfort to a friend in need. Yet it felt like something had shifted between us, though I couldn't exactly put my finger on what. Over the next few days, I wondered if things would be awkward the next time we saw each other. Would Mike avoid me? Would our easy friendship be strained by this minor intimacy we'd shared? I got my answer 3 days later when he knocked on my door with a 6-pack of our favorite beer. "Payment for the hotel services," he said with a grin. We fell back into our normal routine, watching games, talking about work, complaining about dating in the city. If anything, there seemed to be a new level of comfort between us. The experience hadn't created distance. It had somehow brought us closer. About 2 weeks later, after we'd had a few beers while watching a game at my place, Mike brought it up again. "You know, I've been thinking about that night I stayed over," he said, his eyes fixed on the TV screen rather than looking at me. My heart did a little jump. "Yeah." It made me realize something. He paused, taking a swig of his beer. "I've always had these, I don't know, preconceived ideas about certain things. Like what it means to be close to someone, especially another guy." I stayed quiet, letting him find his words. "I guess what I'm trying to say is, thanks. Not just for letting me stay over, but for making me confront some of my own limitations, I guess, about friendship and intimacy and all that." It wasn't a dramatic confession or a revelation of hidden feelings. It was something more valuable, an acknowledgement of growth, of boundaries examined and perhaps expanded. Anytime, I said simply. That's what friends are for. He nodded, and we clinked our beer bottles together in a silent toast. I don't know if anything more will ever develop between Mike and me. Probably not, and that's completely fine. What matters is that one cold night and a power outage gave us both something unexpected, a deeper understanding of each other, and perhaps of ourselves. In a world where men are often taught to maintain emotional distance from each other, especially across the straight/gay divide, there was something quietly revolutionary about that night. Not because anything romantic happened, but because nothing needed to happen for the experience to be meaningful. Sometimes, the most profound connections come from the simplest acts of kindness, like offering your bed to a friend when the power goes out. And sometimes, those small moments can illuminate much bigger truths about how we relate to each other, what we fear, and what happens when we let those fears go, even for just one night. As for Mike and me, we continue our friendship, perhaps with a deeper appreciation for what it means to truly be there for someone else. And if his power ever goes out again, well, he knows he's always welcome in my bed, in the most innocent sense of the phrase. Though I have to admit, there's a small part of me that wonders what might happen if we ever found ourselves in that situation again. But that's a story for another time. Total_char_count, 13,027.